Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I'm here today with body chopping Michael Kester.
Yeah, I pretty much just chop bodies for a living.
And we got two movies on Double Feature, which is the show that you are listening to right now.
American Psycho and Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
So you stealthed this in here. We were talking, we're drafting up the schedule,
Yeah.
and you go, hey, we should really do Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. My assumption then was what you meant, and I guess, you know, this is my fault for assuming. I believe that what you meant was, I have seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and therefore, I think it's a good movie for us to do on the show.
No, that's not what I meant.
What you actually meant. Go on.
What I meant was, I haven't seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, but I probably should. Let's put it next to something else that's a portrait of a serial killer.
This accidental double feature idea that you have created.
Not accidental. Underhanded, maybe?
Okay, yeah, that's better. That feels, objectively, that feels more true and more fair on all fronts. Mm-hmm. This underhanded double feature you've created was a brilliant idea.
Oh, good.
Which is why I agreed to it.
Good.
Can I take credit for that?
Yeah,
I'm going to do
absolutely.
very few brilliant things on our show today.
Okay.
I'm going to take credit for this one.
Great.
So today we have some serial killer character studies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We also have a little bit of transgressive fiction.
Mm-hmm.
We have a little bit of, our characters feel confined by the status quo. Here that's a bit extreme because they're murdering people. But I don't know that we've ever really covered the term transgressive fiction before.
No, probably not.
It's something that seems to come up anytime we talk about taboo movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's generic enough that it may come up in every single movie we do. But that's one of the things when you talk about American Psycho, people think about a lot. The idea of breaking out of the status quo and kind of, society having these expectations, our character feeling almost claustrophobic, confined by them, like he has to break out of some kind of prison, challenge those things. And we're going to see a bit of that in both of the movies. So we're going to spoil these films.
Boil them to death.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, that was actually, no pun was intended there, but...
I challenge you to create a pun for the chapters.
Okay.
Right now.
We'll turn that page when we get to it.
I never stop being impressed with you, ever. I just never stop. So you can use the chapters feature. You can skip between the two movies. Skip over American Psycho. Skip to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Which is the same thing.
It's not the same thing at all. That's my biggest surprise. When you set up this double feature, my only concern is that it would be redundant, which is probably my concern with all of our double features.
Yeah.
Or our show in general, compared against the rest of the internet. But brilliantly, there is enough difference between these two.
Far and away enough difference. I can think of one major difference, but it's already venturing into spoiler territory.
That major difference is American Psycho, which is the first movie that we're doing. Let's get this shit out of the way right now. Mary Harron, who has a vagina.
She does have a vagina.
But
At
also
least
directed
I'm led
this film.
to believe she has a vagina.
Sure, certainly. We've glossed over female directors so many times.
I thought you were going to say we've glossed over vaginas.
Oh, that's probably happened too. That's never happened. Every mentionable vagina on the history of double feature.
You would say we get in depth?
I was going to say we've exploited to its full potential. I almost stopped myself from saying that for the reason that you elected to. Thanks. This, I think this says a little bit about ourselves if we're going to look at this idea of feminism. Mm-hmm. The fact we're not even aware that these movies are directed by women.
Yeah.
We're certainly not putting them on the show because they're directed by women. We've had a couple in the past.
Yeah, we have.
And we didn't really take a lot of time to talk about their directors. And so I feel like this might be a good excuse, just this one time, to indulge and talk about Mary Harron.
All right.
Who was 47 when she made this movie.
Wow, that's kind of weird.
Yeah,
that's
isn't that
old
strange
for a director.
You know, you think
Well, I
that,
mean, I don't know. Did she do anything? What did she do before this?
She did, before this, she did I Shot Andy Warhol in at mid-90s.
Okay.
And then this was, 2000? Somewhere around there.
Something like that.
And the notorious Betty Page, that Betty Page documentary.
She did that?
That was 2005.
Mm-hmm.
She's done a lot of TV stuff, though.
Okay.
I mean, she did Oz, she did 6 Feet Under, she did The L Word, Big Love. She was kind of on the HBO payroll for a while.
Right on.
And so she's had her hand in at least a single episode of a lot of those different series. The movie was also co-written by the actor who plays Elizabeth in the film. So, we're looking at a movie that is written by her and Mary Harron, and then directed by Mary Harron. Really female-fronted film here. Now, we saw her a little bit on the show when we did This Film Is Not Yet Rated.
Okay.
She talked a little bit about... Remember, she was talking about censorship and about some of the stuff in American Psycho.
That was year one, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I remember almost nothing from year one. The standouts for year one for me is you not being sure whether to be ashamed or to masturbate during Hostel 2.
I don't know why I didn't just do both.
Masturbate with shame. That's the new tagline for Double Feature.
If we're going to talk about transgressive fiction today, Michael Kester, we need to talk about shameful masturbation.
All right.
My point was that Double Feature is a shame-free masturbatory zone.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways,
masturbate with pride.
What I was getting back to is that people remember Christian Bale from American Psycho.
They do.
They don't remember Mary Harron, which is fair because she's behind the camera, so that's okay. But they remember Christian Bale, and we've gone out of our way in a lot of the movies that feature Christian Bale and Double Feature not to really talk about him.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's not to say anything about Christian Bale, but it's sort of, there's a bit of an oversaturation sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it comes from The Dark Knight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing when we talk about Johnny Depp and that director whose name I feel like if I even say... It's Tim Burton, right?
Well, I would also go so far as to say that Johnny Depp's super saturation came from Jack Sparrow.
That is also true. Yeah, you get into these Hollywood sort of Jerry Bruckheimer, maybe a name I've never mentioned on Double Feature before, Jerry Bruckheimer films. I don't know why. I just don't feel like we need to, like, what could we possibly add to that conversation?
Right. Well, that's film discussion from USA Today.
Yeah,
that's not our territory.
Yeah, exactly.
We cover fucking Herschel Gordon Lewis, not Jerry Bruckheimer.
But Christian Bale is something that really stands out about this movie.
It's true, absolutely.
I remember watching some of the behind the scenes kind of stuff when this first came out on DVD.
Yeah.
And hearing his accent.
Yeah.
And then realizing that in my head at the time, Christian Bale, I mean, part of it is that the movie's called American Psycho.
Right.
But if I thought of cinematic American fucking icon, American Psycho, that's what I went to for that. Just this guy who stands out as satirical, just in
the satirical American poster child.
He's so over the top.
Mm-hmm.
The character is so over the top. That's what the entire fucking movie's about. And then to hear his accent,
right?
it was. I mean, I had no idea. We were looking a bit at the Miles Fisher video before we watched this. There are so many icons if you haven't seen this Miles Fisher video, by the way, I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's not really, there's no industrial beats. So what do I know about it? But this guy who looks vaguely like Christian Bale.
He looks more than vaguely.
Or a lot, or identical to Christian Bale.
I would go with close to identical.
Has reenacted some of the iconic moments from this film for his music video.
Right.
So you can Google that. But the icons of this film are so clear, even after all this time, that a music video that comes out 10 years later, it has, I mean, people see it and they know. There's no, this is American Psycho title card.
It's
you just
obvious.
know looking at it.
But if you're going to go with title cards, I think that there are two things. For me, business cards and videotapes.
Yeah, right? Well, I mean, that gets to this question of how does the movie get under your skin?
Yeah.
And that's something I really want to talk about in both of these films today. But how the horror is portrayed. If we're going to look at this as a horror film, which a
lot of people, I would say, mistakenly do.
Sure, certainly. I talked on year one a lot about how I'd never really seen or was interested in horror before this the show. And this was one of the few mildly, considered horror films that I owned because I looked at it more as a piece of satire.
Sure.
Which is, I think, probably I don't want to say something like the correct way to look at the movie. Thank you.
This is a great satire film.
It is. It's an amazing piece of satire. I think if I had to narrow down, I mean, give me your take on this. What's really horrifying about this movie?
The thing that's really terrifying about it is the fact that this guy is supposed to be, your standard, completely successful guy. I mean, we live in Chicago, right? This is the guy that gets on the L at 9 a.m.
Sure. Yeah.
The guy that goes down to the Loop, goes into a high-rise building in a suit, walks in, says hi to the receptionist, spends the entire day in his office, is a member of high-functioning society, and in his off time, he's mean to homeless people.
Yeah.
He kills his competition. He's a total fucking whack job.
Right.
And he knows that he's a total whack job, but he's more concerned with self-image than self-preservation.
I think that's what really gets to me. If something gets under my skin about this movie, it's less of the gore and more of the lifestyle.
Right.
The things that he's obsessed about. So we're talking about Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, is 27. Mm-hmm. The older I get, the weirder that is to me.
Yeah.
Do you find that strange?
I find that about strange with anything. When was the last time you watched Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? We're older than all those kids now.
Yeah, isn't that weird? I remember Frank Miller once talking about, when he became the age that Batman was.
Yeah.
And what a weird awakening that was for him. And I finally got that moment when I heard that Patrick Bateman was 27. Mm-hmm. I said, wait a second. I can never be as old as Patrick Bateman.
Right.
That's a weird thing for me. So if this is a satire of anything, it's a satire of Wall Street in the late 80s.
Sure. Unlike Wall Street, which came out in the late 80s.
Don't even get me started on Oliver Stone. If you're going to ask me what's a more accurate portrayal of Wall Street, the crappy film Wall Street or American Psycho, I'm going to let American Psycho win, even if I'd set up the wrong question for that answer.
All right. Money never sleeps.
God, fuck that cynical piece of shit. Oh, I hate that movie. This movie says nothing about capitalism. It says everything about lifestyle.
Sure.
That's where you want to go in a film about Wall Street.
It's a lot about personal image and about...
Absolutely.
I think if we want to talk about satirizing Wall Street, take the moment where he has the two hookers in his living room.
Sure.
And asks, do you want to know what I do for a living? Well, not really. And then he tells them and they have no idea.
Yeah.
That's how that would actually go. And it would totally drive that man insane.
Right.
Knowing that he was about to be inside not one, but two people who had zero interest in how successful he had been.
Yeah, I mean, I think you found the moment of the film. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think about that going back to all of these different things that happen and what that says about his character. But that scene is something we see reoccurring constantly.
Sure.
He's obsessed with these things. The film shows us how obsessed he is.
Right.
The film shows us nobody else gives a shit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody gives a shit. And he almost seems oblivious to that.
Yeah.
He seems mildly annoyed, but like he needs to shrug it off in order to continue breathing as a human being.
Right.
And that's part of the humor of the film. I mean, American Psycho is a lot more humorous than I always remember it being. When you use a word like satire, I suppose that's supposed to be true, but Brazil's also satire.
Brazil is satire.
I suppose some people would consider Brazil laugh out loud funny, but
I would also consider it that.
Well, what I'm trying to get at, and maybe Brazil's a bad go-to, but I don't think satire necessitates laugh out loud funny, right?
No, I agree fully.
Something like South Park would be something that I think I could watch, not laugh once, and still go, this is brilliant. But then again, a lot of people think South Park is the funniest fucking thing on the planet, and they're probably right, and I'm probably wrong.
Okay. I'm kind of, this show has brought me to this point where I don't really know if there is a right and wrong.
Sure.
I kind of think everybody's wrong, and that only directors are right, which is one of my driving reasons to get a film made, so that I can actually be right about a film for a change.
I feel the exact same way as you do, except the opposite, but I feel like somehow we completely agree because of it. Patrick Bateman is on the verge of tears when he can't get a table. There's a moment of sheer panic when he realizes Paul's apartment overlooks the park. Of course, there's a moment of sheer panic, we think, for security because he's a killer, and our mind is instantly made the movie about that. But it's because the apartment
is more expensive
is better than his.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a status. It's
to
all status.
hear the things that he thinks about. I mean, when you do something narrative, when you do something like Dexter, which I think is inspired a lot by American Psycho, and you try and get inside a serial killer's head, you have a movie or a TV show or a book written from the serial killer's perspective, you can't really talk about, hey, I'm worried about where I'm going to stash this body, or what if I get caught? I mean, you have to deal with how psychopathic these people are. How they have no feeling for the people they kill. How their concerns are completely somewhere else. You know, the people in this movie, and not just Patrick Bateman, and we'll get to that, and, you know, we've been talking about him as a killer a lot, and I know a lot of people are already yelling at their podcasts, and we'll get around to the end in a second.
Screaming at their Zunes.
But, you know, all of the people in this movie, they read as if it's just trying to show off. You know, they quote all of these. You as a musician probably run into these fucking douchebags all the time.
God. Ad nauseum.
Who read these elitist, you know, journalistic reviews. Not to say anything bad about the magazines. I'm not going to go off on the New York Times or anything. But to read the reviews in there, we know a little something about reviews, at the very least, if nothing about journalism or papers.
No, I mean, I run into that all the time. And just people, I mean, I think there's a really odd connection to the music world. I mean, the art scene. You're familiar with the art scene. It's not just a music thing. But there are just people who are involved in the art scene, not because of their love of the art, but because of their capability of imbuing status. You start a band not necessarily because you're a good musician, because you love making music, because you want to share something with people. But because you know that you have a look and connections, and that you will be interviewed on fucking
Q101.
Yeah. Q101.
Don't hate me.
I don't hate you.
Find Michael's Q101 interview. Is that online somewhere?
It's on YouTube.
And all I get on YouTube is meltdowns. So they're quoting these reviews out of major papers to show off how they read. And, you know, you talk about that. I mean, it's similar to their love of music. Patrick Bateman, you know, the infamous scene where he's talking about that album.
Huey Lewis in the News?
Yeah. He does not actually love music. You know, he's in his apartment talking about fucking Genesis. He loves to show off his love of music. And no one cares. No one ever cares. That kind of self-image is really important to him. I mean, he talks about himself as if he's better than all these people, and as if that's factual, right? When he's talking about his haircut, it's just factually better than, you know, than someone else's haircut. But he sees these certain moments where he recognizes his own weakness when standing up next to somebody else, and that devastates him. He sees a better business card, and he is completely decimated. You visually see him crumble in the scene. I mean, that's one of those things where we have to go back to crediting Christian Bale. They're all talking about these cards, and when he finally sees the final card, I mean, the look on his face, it's like he's destroyed. So this is all part of the satire, and then I guess as a product, something that I find very humorous. But from the opening credits, I mean, you want to talk about something that's Dexter-esque. You know, the opening credits of this movie giving you the impression of blood and then moving to something else. Giving you the impression of blood and then moving to high society. I mean, it's a perfect setup for what's going to happen in this film. But the funny line that I always go back to in my head, there's two. One is feed me a stray cat, which we'll get to in a second. The other is I have to return some videotapes. I'm not sure why this is the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard, but it's an excuse I use in my personal life all the time. I think what's funny about it is, you know, in American Psycho, it makes sense to return some videotapes. And the way he uses that is humorous, but in the 80s, you return videotapes. No one first of all, you can't even rent a video, much less a videotape these days.
It's true.
With Blockbusters shutting down left and right. In fact, the mere mention of them on our show is probably the most fame and notoriety they've gained in months, if not years. But then going to feed me a stray cat. I mean, what I love is this whole time we're talking about how ridiculously crazy he is. You know, Wall Street has burned him out. He's killing people left and right. The ending would leave us believe, essentially, that he's not killed anyone.
Which is almost more insane than the former part of the film.
We thought he was a nut job. Now he's that much worse.
And the thing that I really like about this film with the unfolding of the fact that he's not killing anybody is if we take the the detective, right? Willem Dafoe's character, but
Sure.
straight, I
Yeah.
would be led to believe. He goes through this film, and the whole time I'm sitting watching going, you cannot be a fucking detective. Look how guilty this guy
Yeah,
is.
right.
And then it turns out he's not guilty, and you realize, oh, he was actually a really
great
good detective,
Yeah.
being able to see through the fact that this was just a flustered Wall Street motherfucker.
Yeah, and in retrospect, making that one of the smarter characters of the film, which is a really amazing kind of reveal, something you may not even pick up on when you finally get that information at the end.
And he's also probably the most human character in the film.
Certainly.
He picks up the Huey Lewis album, but because he likes it.
And now that you mention that, he detects that Patrick Bateman does not give a shit about music. It's perfect. I love the way they reveal this. When we talked about Fight Club, we talked a lot about potential ways to reveal things and sometimes coming off as heavy-handed. We talked about that again in the movie Psycho and Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This is just the most dry, perfect way to... I mean, a car explodes, and it's one of those things where a lot of people watching this movie who go, I'm better than this movie. I know that cars don't really explode when you shoot them, only to find out that's really kind of part of the plot.
Right.
Bateman looks at his gun eventually and thinks, oh, wait, cars don't explode when you shoot them. It's as if even he isn't believing the illusion. It's starting to get ahead of him at this point.
Well, it's basically that he's just a really big Mythbusters fan.
Mythbusters didn't even exist back when this movie came out.
This guy's nuts, dude.
Nor did it exist in the 80s.
Totally nuts.
You can tell we've just started year 4 because it's once again your goal to tag Mythbusters in every single episode.
Absolutely fucking true.
So the character's iconic. It's what makes the movie interesting. The scenes are certainly iconic. The satire that it talks about.
Can I have an aside here really quick?
Yeah, for
briefly? Anybody who is listening to this show and saw American Psycho the last time 2, 3, 5 years ago,
10 years ago,
rewatch American Psycho.
Yeah.
Watch it with a fresh mind. Watch it because Christian Bale's real best film isn't The Dark Knight, but you really need to watch the film again.
And if you've seen it recently, or perhaps you watched it for the show, I'm going to give you 2 small amazing things that you can now check out. One is Rules of Attraction, oddly. Written by the same author. Has some of the, as a lot of those books do, the overlapping characters.
Sure.
So Rules of Attraction, in part, stars the character Sean Bateman, who is, I believe, Patrick Bateman's younger brother. And I think there's a couple of references to them. It's just a strange, odd tie-in. It reminds me of that...
Some of All Fears... Hunt for Red October.
I was going to say
Tom Clancy thing.
I was going to say Jackie Brown, Michael Keaton, and that Soderbergh movie too. Out of Sight I no longer have any idea what I'm talking about. Second thing, and I just briefly, there's a photo shoot in Empire magazine. It's a 20th anniversary or something.
Sure.
I don't have all the details in front of me.
Google American Psycho Empire magazine. You'll know exactly.
It's amazing, and so. These photos were so distracting. We couldn't even really spend a lot of time looking at them this morning. But they are photos from... They're actors from these very iconic movies. Sort of, I don't even want to say portraying iconic scenes.
Right.
They're thematic photo shoots.
Yeah.
You look at the one with Patrick Bateman is Christian Bale. Recently reprising this role.
He's not dressed like Patrick. He's dressed like Patrick Bateman, but he has the Christian Bale close haircut, harsh times kind of look.
That's exactly what it is. As you're looking at these photos, they seem to be the actors in the settings of the characters. Might be the best way to describe them.
Sure.
The actors are dressed, I guess, slightly different from the roles. The one of Christian Bale, he simply has an axe, and he's standing in front of a table of business cards. There's a great one of Arnold Schwarzenegger in a suit, standing in front of a motorcycle.
With some sunglasses on.
Yeah, there's a Shaun of the Dead one. I mean, there's a lot of really good... There's Silence of the Lambs one.
Yep.
So just fantastic photos. So look those up. I think that was Empire Magazine.
So the second film that we covered is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. And like I said in the beginning, if you chaptered over it, totally you're right. We're all about freedom of chaptering here on Double Feature. But I had never seen it before. All I knew really was that it was Michael Rooker, who he plays Henry.
Right.
And Michael Rooker recently boomeranged back to me. I've always been a Michael Rooker fan, but I've never been able to really kind of own him the way I did when Call of the Dead came out, which is, it's a video game. Gonna make it brief. You play as Michael Rooker, Robert Englund, Sarah Michelle Gellar, or Danny Trejo, and you shoot at George Romero. That's the game.
Yeah, kind of amazing. Danny Trejo has a machete. I mean, I don't need to explain what you just said. Yep. I think you've set it up beautifully. It's one of those things where I was flipping through the Xbox Marketplace thingy, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, was that Robert Englund's face in that zombie game? What the fuck? That guy looks a lot like Robert Englund. Yep. And you click on it or push the A button or flail your arms at your Kinect or however the fuck you get into that. And amazing. Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is one of those Man with No Shoes movies that people request we do all the goddamn time. So maybe when you said, let's do this movie, that's what lit up in the back of my head.
Cred. You just have a fluorescent Las Vegas style cred lamp in the back of your brain.
So we use a Gmail address for our, where you send the naked photos.
Doublefeatureshow@gmail.com.
And I love Gmail. I think it's probably the best thing Google has created outside of Google Voice, which lets me use an iPod instead of paying a monthly phone bill. Anyways, it has these filters set up, just like, any email client would, but they're right on the website. You don't need to know anything about the mail app on your Mac or any of that shit. Mm-hmm. You just go on the website, you set up filters. So I can go on there and set up a filter for, I don't know, Blade Runner. And then it automatically marks all of those messages as read and moves them out of the inbox before I even see them. It's really, really fascinating. Also fascinating, this movie is shot in our beloved Chicago.
Oh, I really like Chicago. I'm a big fan.
It's great to see these tiny, the Chicago Tribune.
Sure.
Or, the big one for me was the 22, the Clark bus.
Yeah, and over by Best Buy.
Yeah, and it's pointed at you, Mr. Diner aficionado, will know what's the name of that goddamn. I've never even been there.
It's one of the few remaining golden nuggets that hasn't been changed into a golden angel or a golden apple. If you come to Chicago, I demand you find one of the golden diners and the 22 bus and Henry.
I want to let everyone who listens to this show know we were one term away from you filling the entire show talking about Golden Apple.
Oh my God.
So had this been Golden Apple instead of, what is it, Golden Nugget?
Golden Nugget.
We would have been in serious trouble.
That's true.
Golden Apple is the post-show Glitter Mouse hangout.
It's the haunt. Yeah, it is.
I can see I'm holding you back right now. Back to Henry. Back to Tom Tolles. So
let's go back to Tom Tolles. This is
what I'll do. I'll derail you onto Tom Tolles, who I know you want to talk about. Who's Otis in this movie. And who I bet Rob Zombie fucking loves because he's dirty as shit.
Well, Rob Zombie does love him. Rob Zombie has him in at least, I can think of 3 Rob Zombie films. Okay, right. 4 that Tom Tolles is in.
Okay, well, there you go. Maybe there's that too. I just meant looking at this character.
Sure. Well, that's where he came from.
Right.
You know when Rob Zombie picks movies, it's early in the year, I'm allowed to say Rob Zombie, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
When Rob Zombie picks actors, it's because of a role they did somewhere in their career. And I am willing to bet dollars to motherfucking donuts that Tom Tolles got picked because of Otis.
Probably the case, and he's great as Otis. I mean, all the characters have to pull their weight in something where there's only 3 characters. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to talk about, all the characters of this movie. I want to talk about the serial killer.
Sure.
Right? That's the setup of the show, and that is Michael Rooker.
Yes.
Holy crap, Michael Rooker.
He's terrifying.
So, I mean, Slither, we talked about on the show.
Slither.
So
I'm going to make you talk about him on Super.
Okay.
At some point.
That's going to happen somewhere. I wasn't even aware that he was in Super. Fantastic. Actually, no, you told me that before, and James Gunn, and how have I not seen Super? I'm a terrible person.
But we'll probably skip him in Mallrats.
That's weird that you mentioned Mallrats, because that's probably the first film I'd ever seen him in. Is it? I mean, it's a Kevin Smith movie. Mm. It's been a while. Do we need to revisit Kevin Smith on this show?
Maybe.
Is that something that might need to happen?
Probably fair. Well, we're all about fairness.
We picked Chasing Amy on year 1, which I believe people bitch about 13-minute features or whatever. What is it? 12-minute feature?
Yeah.
That got about 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Literally about 12 seconds. But Repo the Genetic Opera we talked about.
Sure.
And they had originally shot a short which had Michael Rooker in it and which I've never seen. Uh-huh. I'm sure it exists on one of the Repo 9,000 disc box set.
I'm pretty sure it's over 9,000.
Escape from Butcher Bay. The voice work in Escape from Butcher Bay, by the way, whether it's Vin Diesel or Exhibit, is all surprisingly amazing. Surprisingly amazing. The only reason I've ever cared about anything Vin Diesel has ever done is Butcher Bay, is the Riddick stuff, and it's great. So Michael Rooker in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
Popping up all over the goddamn place.
But this is where he came from. This is his roots. This film was made on a small budget, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking, I think it's 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
The budget was under, $100,000 or something.
Okay, so I know that my golden apple is your wanting to talk about the background of Henry. So
Sure it is.
Why don't you tell me how they fell into a film starring then unknown Michael Rooker?
The story behind this movie is really amazing and something we could probably riff on for hours. It's an independent film. It's got this tiny, tiny budget.
Sure.
One that is often described as shoestring.
Also
right?
a tiny, tiny aspect ratio.
One that is often described as TV dinner. It's never described as that, but can we start that? Can
Absolutely.
we call these TV dinner?
Done and done.
Okay.
We'll stick it on the glossary section of Double Feature.
The non-existent lexicon.
Mm-hmm.
Still working on it, people. Still working on it. Still yet to start it, people. Still yet to start it. So he was supposed to film this wrestling documentary. The director had made a documentary for this production company previously. And a lot of this wrestling documentary apparently, these are all details I'm vaguely recalling. So don't come to Double Feature for facts, people. I don't know what I'm talking about. A lot of the footage they were hoping to acquire for this documentary, it fell through for whatever reason. The guy wanted more money, or I don't remember what the story was. So they decided they were going to take the money used to buy out all of this film to make the documentary with, and instead give it to the director, and they basically just told him, go make a horror movie. And so only having $100,000, I mean, this isn't Robert Rodriguez. You can't just make a fucking Spy Kids epic for,
right.
$7,000. $100,000, honestly, even in the hands of, some of the greatest filmmakers, or basically any filmmaker, but Robert Rodriguez is what I'm getting
Roger
to.
Corman.
Okay, yeah, I guess Roger Corman as well. You have a hard time making a film, much less a great film. And this director wanted to make a great film. So I think it was through a episode of 2020 or one of the kind of investigative journalism. Those words barely came out of my mouth.
Primetime TV, Barbara Walters.
Thank you, that. Where they spend 40 minutes or 20 minutes or however long those shows are and kind of investigate an interesting true case. And this one was on Henry Lee Lucas.
Okay.
Who, when I say we could talk for hours about this, I probably mean Henry Lee Lucas. This guy, have you ever heard of this guy before, by the way?
I haven't, and I've heard about a lot of serial killers.
Yeah, so this is one of the more obscure ones.
He's got a middle name, so he's got to be a serial killer.
If he's gained any notoriety past, the initial killings or confessions or what have you, it's from this movie.
Sure.
And probably not much beyond that. But this guy they call him the confession killer, right? He has confessed to over 600 murders. Now, you're probably thinking, a serial killer. He's killed 600 people. He should, by all rights, no matter how boring or mundane his killings are, probably be the most talked about serial killer of all time.
Well, maybe, but knowing what I know about serial killers, I'm guessing he's lying.
Bingo. Well, so it varies from 300 to 600 when you talk about the higher end of ones he's confessed to and ones where they actually looked at the evidence and said, that's maybe physically possible.
Right.
And when it comes down to it, they look through this evidence and they basically determined that there's no way he could have killed this many people, just given where he was. In fact, given the places he was, I think they narrowed it down to, double digits, maybe even single digits of how many people he could have actually, killed. And so this is kind of interesting. So you think, does this guy just read the paper a lot? How does he even know about 600 murders that he could try and take credit for? I can't remember a list of 600. I can't remember a list of 600 fucking anything, let alone names of people who appeared in a paper, and where they were and details from the crime or whatever. I guess what was discovered was that cops would try and empty out their entire backlog of unsolved mysteries on this guy. So as a department, you have all these unsolved cases. Looks terrible for your department. You bring over the whole fucking bin of, I'm thinking of the Seven-esque, cardboard bin of case files, and you dump it on the desk, and you just start flipping through one by one. And he basically goes, "That's an interesting case because I did it."
Yeah.
And then you move to the next one. He fucking stamps that shit, signs off. He's confessed. He's in prison already. He's there for life or what have you. And, just case after case after case, the sociopath fucking confesses to. And so at the actual time that he was, I think he was put on death row. For something I want to say was called the Orange Socks murder or something. You're going to have to, again, if you want facts, you're going to have to look into this on your own. I'm not going to be able to help you with this. But at the time he was really convicted and they sort of wrapped up, all right, giving him a death sentence or a life sentence or whatever. They said it was about 12 people that he's probably killed, that they had enough evidence to really convict him of out of the 600. So this is something really, really interesting about not necessarily the legal system, but how crime is done.
Yeah.
How people are convicted. And, I've been spending a lot of time just through film noir stuff recently, kind of learning more about the police hierarchy and that whole system. And it just seems to appear more to more as a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
As this sort of thing where you go in the morning and you go, shit, our department has a lot of unsolved cases. The boss is really going to come down on my ass. And you empty them out in front of Henry Lee Lucas. And he totally saves you. I mean, this is, it almost strikes me more as an Enron type scandal than something we talk about on, murder nonfiction.
Right.
On getting to the bottom of, this isn't a Ted Bundy. This is a Jack Abramoff.
Yeah.
It's a scandal. And that's, that whole system to think that cops have quotas, that investigators, FBI agents, detectives all have quotas the way anybody else probably does at their job, is something that's actually a little terrifying to me.
Yeah.
So you feel the quotas there. I mean, certainly, I keep saying legal system. I think about lawyers, lawyers need to win their cases or whatever. But when you think about going back to 7, when you think about the investigators, I never really thought, they're always just solving the case. They're just interested in the truth in my head.
Right.
And that's probably not always true. I mean, it's definitely not always true. That's a little terrifying to me. That's thing number one that gets under my skin. And we're not even really talking about the movie yet.
Well, I think the other things that are really horrifying, if we're going to go back to what makes this a horror film, it's, I think, the tone and the nonchalance of murder.
Yes.
Because like you said, there's 3 characters. So basically, 66% of your cast is okay with killing.
Yeah.
Also, 33% of your cast is okay with incestuous rape.
Sure.
Which is a grossly terrifying percentage. But when you get to killing and then it becomes fun and then they don't want to pay for black and white TV.
Right.
And the whole
time. It just seems so easy.
It's just this weird mood of you kill when you don't want to do something.
Right.
It'd be like if you or I were to go down the street into 7-Eleven, grab ourselves an Arizona tea.
Oh,
and
I
go,
love Arizona tea.
I don't feel like paying, and shoot the cashier.
Right.
And just walk out and go, that was easier than paying.
Yeah, that is where the movie, where it gets to me on a mental level. I mean, I'm already feeling it physically in how dirty it is.
Right, well, the low production value just makes it so much better.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It makes it feel more real.
Yeah.
It almost feels... I mean, I don't want to say it feels like a documentary.
No, it doesn't. It feels like a dramatization on something like 2020.
Sure, right.
And then you get the interspliced actual footage from when they're messing with the family and killing the son and that whole... And then, so you see this, and I'm watching it with my calloused, desensitized, I don't care about you kill the kid, please, I'm having fun mentality. And Otis goes... I'm going to watch it again. And at that point, my stomach turns. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You watch it once because they're trying to fuck with you. You don't watch it again because you like it, you sick bastard.
Right. Oh, my God. Yeah, to think about, I mean, both of those characters, really. But even Henry kind of turns a strange eye to why would we watch this again? So there's that sense of voyeurism, too. And I'm finding quickly in films... that when you want to be creepy, you take a premise that's already creepy, and once you feel like you have it refined and this is your best work and you've got the equation perfect, you just sprinkle in voyeurism, and it always gets that much worse. Always gets that much worse. And that scene that they're watching is effectively a long take too. It's this impressive orchestration of these events that they have to film in a single take because that's how Henry and Otis really would have filmed this thing. And so there's that director's point of view from that too. We should watch that again. That's a great long take.
Yeah.
I think if my TV looks shitty and turn that wonderful pale blue. I mean, I'm actually looking for a TV like that. If anyone listening has that television, I have this kind of aesthetic. I'd almost call it a fetish. It's this obsession over shitty pale blue. Right. I always think of Videodrome, even though that's probably not true.
What Videodrome looks like.
Just that Betamax crappy TV, scrolling lines,
Sure.
God, I don't know why I love that aesthetic so much, but I absolutely adore it. So I would probably not kick in that TV. I would certainly not identify with basically anything in this movie. It's weird to talk about their mentality, and it seems so foreign to me, but it's a thing that actually exists. It's the, he says it in the movie, open your eyes, it's either you or them. It's, I hear that and I just think, really?
Yeah.
If I were to describe humanism as anything, it's that I am on Team Human.
Yep.
And that's it, right? I think I have to give Rebecca Watson a credit. I was reading about her, and I guess she kind of identifies as humanist as well, talking about Team Human. That's it.
Yeah.
That is, we are in this fucking thing together, destroy all tribalism.
Right.
I don't care, what side of the planet people are on or what they, I do have this strangely American concern to protect the homeland first because it's what's closest to me and I do fear for myself. But I see another person suffering and they could be on another fucking planet. It's not even Team Earth.
And the other thing that's terrifying to me is when I find somebody who has just this really dark outlook, people who think people are intrinsically evil,
I believe it's called cynicism.
I feel like when people think that deep down people are bad, people are selfish, people are evil, that scares me because I'm thinking that they're also on my team.
Right.
Team Human, right? But these people that think that their teammates are bad people.
Right.
It'd be like, that's scary to think that there might be some.
Those are poor teammates.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Is I want everybody on my team to want the team to win, not to want half the team to win.
Oh, God.
Not to want a select few teammates to succeed.
Yeah,
that's not how sports works. I think
we've once again found ourselves in a metaphor we don't know anything about. That's really just the theme of the show today. 2 movies that are a bit heady that deserve to be talked about by people who aren't Eric and Michael on Double Feature. So perhaps talking about humanism also reflects one of the things I love the most about this film, which is that I feel like it's made, first of all, it almost has to be, for a film this effective, it almost has to be made from a humanist perspective.
Yeah.
It almost has to be made from somebody who actually cares about humanity in order to find itself horror. This isn't here accidentally. This is what the movie is about. Us versus them is, one of the biggest themes of this film. And
it ends with this Bonnie and Clyde kind of mentality, which is a very us or them poster.
Well, and ultimately probably why he kills her, right?
Yeah.
Us or them. He thinks about self-preservation, top priority. He seems to feel a little bit for her, but as soon as she's useless to him, he's never even really using her for anything. It's just kind of an amusement for him, and he snaps.
Yep.
And he sees that his self-preservation has to come first. And while he probably could have gotten out of this without killing her, that is the nature of a psychopath. They're
that
not
is
necessarily
the portrait of a serial killer.
Thank you, sir. It's logic is probably not high on the list of things you would dedicate to these people, although that might not be true in a lot of cases too. Another thing that makes me think, yay, humanism from the directing, the creation standpoint of this movie is the way you feel some of these kills. And for a movie called Portrait of a Serial Killer, there's not a lot of killing.
No, there's really not.
On-screen killing. They do the fantastic machete opening where you, I don't even want to spoil that moment, but you put a lot of nudity and violence, early in the movie. And then everyone thinks it's got a lot of nudity and violence throughout the movie. But, and I mean particularly to speak of violence, but I suppose there's nudity too. when you're early in this film, you're just seeing corpse after corpse after corpse. That's the opening. He's driving around. We're just showing you lots of corpses. We get the idea he's a serial killer, but those corpses aren't there because we need to know he's a serial killer. It's in the fucking title of the movie. They're there so we feel like he's killing left and right.
Yeah.
And the movie eventually came out unrated because the MPAA said there is nothing you can edit out of this. It is fundamentally, I mean, that's the worst thing you can hear back.
Yeah.
It is fundamentally an NC-17 film. There's nothing you can do about this. And, that stalls production for a long time. A movie that was probably created 5 years before it really came out a place people could see it. And you get the feeling there's all of these bloody murders when you don't see a lot of them. It's mostly character study. But when you see some of the violence, and I think specifically of Otis getting stabbed in the eye.
Yeah.
I mean, huge credit to Tom Tolles, but just the pacing, the tone, and what you've seen in the movie previous to this, you fucking feel that. It reminds me of that kind of moment from the second Kill Bill, which we'll eventually get to someday. You feel that devastation. You feel that he gets stabbed in the eye, and I just think, fuck, now he has no depth perception.
Well, and his reaction is it's one of the first real reactions I've seen in film where he gets stabbed in the eye, and he's not a badass, oh, that sucks, but I'm going to get revenge. His life is over. He's done. He's cashing his chips, throwing in the towel. I might as well be a dead man. My eye hurts.
It's amazing you say that because that sounds like such hyperbole, maybe to somebody who hasn't seen it. And maybe it doesn't have this effect for everyone. But I thought the same thing. I saw that, and I thought to myself, I have never seen a person really get stabbed in the eye until just now.
Right.
I have never seen a moment of agony in film until this moment right here. It fucking sucks for him. It is, you're right, it's the end of the world. His life is over at this point because he's been stabbed in the eye. We might as well see him, bleed out and die. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen to a human being. And he sells that. I mean, he sells it just beautifully.
Yep. I guess the weird thing about the end of this film is that by the end of the movie, you have the serial killer, Michael Rooker, Henry. And he's not the worst guy. No. I mean, arguably, he's the worst guy in the grander scale.
Exactly.
But in the scope of the film, the worst guy is the killer who rapes his sister, who is already a rape victim.
Sure.
He dies, and you kind of get this sense of closure and relief because the bad guy has fallen.
The protagonist has won.
And then you realize that the protagonist is going to kill the girl that was just victimized anyway, and you're basically left punched in the gut.
Yeah.
Where the film just goes, no, they're both bad guys.
Yeah.
Just because Rapey was killed by Stabby, it doesn't mean Stabby's going to stop stabbing.
And it's an excellent way to end your independent film if you want to look at having a lasting impression. I mean, this film would have been definitely worthy of talking about up to this point, but the fact we have an ending like this, it really it haunts you. It stays in your mind for that exact reason.
So we have a website that should also stay in your mind for some reason. That's doublefeatureshow.com. You can also email us. That's doublefeatureshow@gmail.com.
If perhaps this was not your type of slashing and you prefer your Jason Voorhees, you can find a list of all of the Killapaloozas, including the beautiful, wonderful Sleepaway Camp Killapalooza, on the website using this fancy new Killapalooza feature, which is only going to get better and better. Go to the website, click it, it's on the right-hand side. There's so many cool things on the website. I promise. Next time, we are going to get out of art house territory, and we are going to watch women wrestle in mud or something.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about Crank and Shoot 'em Up.
Yeah.
Now, a little bit of a dilemma here.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to point out that Crank and Shoot 'em Up sounds like a really, really bad idea.
It does kind of sound like a bad idea, doesn't it?
It sounds kind of like a situation where we both just went, those movies work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not that.
But I guarantee you that there's a lot more to those films than you realized. And one of the things that we there's something we need to apologize for.
Yeah, here's the thing. And this is part of the dilemma. So these are movies, one of which is a cheap action film that I love, and the other which is a cheap action film that you love.
Yep.
And so we're going to talk about that a little. We're going to talk about the content. when we talk about the movies, we will hold them up as the greatest films of all time.
Yeah.
As we attempt to do with each and every fucking episode of this show.
Except for Chasing Amy.
Except for poor Chasing Amy. I almost feel bad at this point. I don't feel bad at all. Fuck that movie. I'm glad I got my feminism out in this show.
Yeah.
These films are the most misogynistic.
Yeah.
I almost want to call them misogynistic pieces of shit for how.
Well, we're
how
allowed to
cruel
say
and
that this
awful
week. We just can't say it next week.
They are cruel and awful to women.
Yes.
They are fine films, and we'll have lots of nice things to say about them. But this is not going to be our finest hour in regard to the treatment of women on this show. And I don't even want to touch on that next week because it'll be such a downer. So I apologize in advance.
We'll just do Russ Meyer later. That'll make up for all the misogyny.
I'm not even going to tackle that.
Watch more fucking film.
Bye. Take credit for that.
Yeah,
I'm going to do
absolutely.
very few brilliant things on our show today.
Okay.
I'm going to take credit for this one.
Great.
So today we have some serial killer character studies.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We also have a little bit of transgressive fiction. We have a little bit of, our characters feel confined by the status quo. Here, that's a bit extreme because they're murdering people. But I don't know that we've ever really covered the term transgressive fiction before.
No, probably not.
It's something that seems to come up anytime we talk about taboo movies. I mean, it's generic enough that it may come up in every single movie we do. But that's one of the things when you talk about American Psycho, people think about a lot. The idea of breaking out of the status quo and kind of, society having these expectations, our character feeling almost claustrophobic, confined by them, like he has to break out of some kind of prison, challenge those things. And we're going to see a bit of that in both of the movies. So we're going to spoil these films.
Boil them to death.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, that was actually, no pun was intended there, but...
I challenge you to create a pun for the chapters.
Okay.
Right now. Yeah,
well, we'll turn that page when we get to it.
I never stop being impressed with you, ever. I just never stop. So you can use the chapters feature. You can skip between the two movies. Skip over American Psycho. Skip to Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Which is the same thing.
It's not the same thing at all. That's my biggest surprise. When you set up this double feature, my only concern is that it would be written in 90s.
Okay.
And then this was, 2000? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, something like that.
And the notorious Betty Page, that Betty Page documentary.
She did that?
That was 2005.
Mm-hmm.
She's done a lot of TV stuff, though.
Okay.
I mean, she did Oz, she did 6 Feet Under, she did The L Word, Big Love. She was kind of on the HBO payroll for a while.
Right on.
And so she's had her hand in at least a single episode of a lot of those different series. The movie was also co-written by the actor who plays Elizabeth in the film. So, we're looking at a movie that is written by her and Mary Harron, and then directed by Mary Harron. Really female-fronted film here. Now, we saw her a little bit on the show when we did This Film Is Not Yet Rated.
Okay.
She talked a little bit about... Remember, she was talking about censorship and about some of the stuff in American Psycho.
That was year one, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I remember almost nothing from year one. The standouts for year one for me is you not being sure whether to be ashamed or to masturbate during Hostel 2.
I don't know why I didn't just do both.
Masturbate with shame. That's the new tagline for Double Feature.
If we're going to talk about transgressive fiction today, Michael Kester, we need to talk about shameful masturbation.
All right.
My point was that Double Feature is a shame-free masturbatory zone.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, what I was getting...
Masturbate with pride.
What I was getting back to is that people remember Christian Bale from American Psycho.
They do.
They don't remember Mary Harron, which is fair because she's behind the camera. So that's okay. But they remember Christian Bale. And we've gone out of our way in a lot of the movies that feature Christian Bale and Double Feature not to really talk about him.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's not to say anything about Christian Bale, but it's sort of, there's a bit of an oversaturation sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it comes from The Dark Knight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing when we talk about Johnny Depp and that director whose name I feel like if I even say, it's Tim Burton, right?
Well, I would also go so far as to say that Johnny Depp's super saturation came from Jack Sparrow.
That is also true. Yeah, you get into these Hollywood sort of Jerry Bruckheimer, maybe a name I've never mentioned on Double Feature before, Jerry Bruckheimer films. I don't know why. I just don't feel like we need to, like, what could we possibly add to that conversation?
Right. Well, that's film discussion from USA Today.
Yeah,
that's not our territory.
Yeah, exactly.
We cover fucking Herschel Gordon Lewis, not
Sure.
Jerry Bruckheimer.
But Christian Bale is something that really stands out about this movie.
It's true. Absolutely.
I remember watching some of the behind the scenes kind of stuff when this first came out on DVD.
Yeah.
And hearing his accent.
Yeah.
And then realizing that in my head at the time, Christian Bale, I mean, part of it is that the movie's called American Psycho.
Right.
But if I thought of cinematic American fucking icon,
Sure.
American Psycho, that's
Sure.
what I went to for that. Just this guy who stands out as satirical, just in
The satirical American poster child.
he's so over the.
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I'm here today with body chopping Michael Kester.
Yeah, I pretty much just chop bodies for a living.
And we got 2 movies on Double Feature, which is the show that you are listening to right now.
American Psycho and Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
So you stealthed this in here. We were talking, we're drafting up the schedule,
Yeah.
and you go, "Hey, we should really do Henry, Portrait of a Serial
Yeah.
Killer." My assumption then was what you meant, and I guess this is my fault for assuming. I believe that what you meant was, I have seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and therefore I think it's a good movie for us to do on the show.
No, that's not what I meant.
What you actually meant. Go on.
What I meant was, I haven't seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, but I probably should. Let's put it next to something else that's a portrait of a serial killer.
This accidental double feature idea that you have created.
Not accidental.
Turn.
Underhanded, maybe?
Okay, yeah, that's better. That feels, objectively, that feels more true and more fair on all fronts. This underhanded double feature you've created was a brilliant idea.
Oh, good.
Which is why I agreed to it.
Good.
Redundant, which is probably my concern with all of our double features.
Yeah.
Or our show in general,
yeah.
compared against the rest of the internet. But brilliantly, there is enough difference
There's
between these two.
far and away enough difference. I can think of one major difference, but it's already venturing into spoiler territory.
That major difference is American Psycho, which is the first movie that we're doing. Let's get this shit out of the way right now. Mary Harron, who has a vagina.
She does have a vagina.
But
At
also
least
directed
I'm led
this
to
film.
believe she has a vagina.
Sure, certainly. We've glossed over female directors so many
I
times.
thought you were going to say we've
on this
glossed
show.
over vaginas.
Oh, that's probably happened too. That's
Yeah.
never happened. Every mentionable vagina on the history of Double Feature,
You would say we get in depth.
I was going to say we've exploited to its full potential. I almost stopped myself from saying that for the reason that you elected to. Thanks. This, I think this says a little bit about ourselves if we're going to look at this idea of feminism.
Mm-hmm.
The fact we're not even aware that these movies are directed by women.
Yeah.
We're certainly not putting them on the show because they're
Right.
directed by women. We've had a couple in the past.
Yeah, we have.
And we didn't really take a lot of time to talk about their directors. And so I feel like this might be a good excuse,
Sure.
just this one time, to indulge and talk about Mary Harron,
All right.
who was 47 when she made this movie.
Wow, that's kind of weird.
Yeah,
that's
isn't that
old
strange?
for a director.
You think
Well, I
that,
mean, I
but
don't know. Did she do anything? What did she do before this?
She did, before this, she did I Shot Andy Warhol in
Okay.